everybody, welcome back to Crafting and Crime Daily. I am Rebecca, also known as Crafting Journey, and I do this show so that you have something to listen to while you're crafting, crochet, knitting, diamond painting, watercolor painting, cross stitch, whatever it is you do, paint pouring. This is also released as a podcast. If you happen to be subscribed to YouTube Music, you can listen to the audio portion of this podcast while you're driving, if you choose to. Anyway, let's get to today's trial. Today we're going to talk about the case against Rita Pangalangan and her ex-boyfriend, Larry Miller. They are charged with conspiracy to commit murder and murder of Christina Pangalangan, who was the 13-year-old daughter of Rita, who is a special needs child. She was born with cerebral palsy, couldn't walk, couldn't talk, wheelchair bound, wears diapers, just sad situation. They accidentally, according to the defense, left her in a hot car for 5.5 hours. And I guess I use that, maybe that was a Freudian slip that I put accidentally in there, because the prosecution is alleging it was no accident. Yeah. Very sad case. And don't go anywhere, because I have video of that day that you're not gonna want to miss, because I'm going to describe the testimony of Larry King Jr. took the stand yesterday, and I'm going to describe his testimony. Once you hear his testimony, then I'm going to play the video, and you can see for yourself whether his testimony is accurate or not. So I want to talk about a few key witnesses that the prosecution put on. First of all, they had to establish the chain of custody of blood that it was obtained from Rita and Larry the day that this happened. Now, I don't know what clued them in to take this blood sample. I suspect it was the narcotics officer that was first on the scene, who said she already was familiar with Rita Pangalangan. By the way, just as an aside, Rita Pangalangan is Filipino, if you were wondering what kind of name that is. It's a Filipino name. Did this narcotics officer know Rita Pangalangan from her job as an investigator, narcotics investigator? I suspect she did. She said she was familiar with her. Is it because of the meth? Probably. So she probably clued the police into what was going on. They took these two to the hospital. The nurse drew their blood. So we had to listen to the nurse. We had to listen to the person that he gave the blood to. Then we had to listen to the person that at the lab that took the blood. We had to listen to the person that did preliminary testing on the blood. Then we had to listen to the person that did the final testing on the blood. Yeah, the entire chain of custody. Wherever that blood went, we had that person on the stand. 5-10 minutes on the stand. That's it. Just to say what their part was in transporting this blood from place to place. So there was no break in the chain of custody. It gets to the final forensic scientist to test it, and the measurement that came out, they measure methamphetamine in nanograms per milliliter. And the result of Larry's was 460, and the result of Rita's was 400. So I'm thinking, okay, what do I do with that information? That measurement means nothing to me. Well, they then put on a forensic toxicologist who, first of all, established that methamphetamine does have therapeutic uses. It used to be used in ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. It would calm down the child. There's better drugs out there now, so I don't know that they use that much anymore. They also use it for people who have narcolepsy. And the therapeutic range of measurement is 10 to 50 nanograms per milliliter in the blood. Like I said, Rita's was 400, Larry's was 460. The misuse or abuse levels in the blood is over 200. So anything over 200 lets that examiner know that this is a person who's misusing or abusing methamphetamine. He talked about he's had values as high as 32,000. Yeah, of course, that person died. He also talked about some of the side effects of methamphetamine. We know from watching the Taylor Schabusiness case, the horror that she created when she chopped that guy to pieces because she was on methamphetamine. I don't know what her blood tested. I don't know if they tested her blood. I would be curious now that I know what the values mean, I'd be curious what her value was. In any case, we're going to find out how Rita and Larry got to be so high that day. So then we had the medical examiner take the stand, and he opined that the cause of death was hyperthermia. Her internal temperature at autopsy was 110. That's pretty high. Then he opined that it would have taken her probably about an hour to die. Yeah. He talked about her being a little over 4 feet tall, 58 pounds, very emaciated. But he didn't mention that that was out of the ordinary. He talked about her cerebral palsy, that examination of the brain was consistent with someone with cerebral palsy, someone who had suffered a birth injury because of lack of oxygen, which is what I had said yesterday. Following that, the prosecution brought on the officer who collected the security footage, and he talked about how this was in front of Larry's house, not Rita's. He talked about how he had this high-end security system set up on his home that runs 24/7. It is motion activated, so if there's no motion happening on the camera, it just skips that part and goes to the next activity that the camera picks up. So they put him on the stand so that they could bring in the video of that 5.5 hours that was taken from that security camera pointing towards that Volkswagen Jetta that the child was in. I'm going to show you this video after I talk about Larry King's testimony. But what the judge did on Tuesday, was it Tuesday? Yeah, Tuesday. He said, listen, the courts are closing on Wednesday at noon because of Hurricane Idalia. So today we're going to go as long as we can. And the prosecutor said, that's perfect. We have a 5.5 hour videotape that we want the jury to view, all 5.5 hours of it. So the judge let the jury know that he would like to work as long as possible. I don't know how long they went because the feed was not showing us the video. So the channels that the video was on, or that was covering this trial, they cut off because there was nothing happening. The camera was just focused on a bunch of people watching a video that they weren't showing us. I do have portions of that video to show you, though, that are super interesting. I would have watched 5.5 hours for you and gave you the best of it. But no, they cut it off. So I don't know what time they ended up going home on Tuesday night. But Wednesday morning, the prosecution rested, and then it was now the defense's case. And the judge had said, we have till noon. The courts are going to be closed on Thursday because of the hurricane, and we will resume this trial on Friday. And from what I understand, South Carolina did get a lot of flooding, so it was probably a good thing. After the videotape was played, the prosecution rested their case. So the case has been rested. They moved for a judgment of acquittal. Both defense attorneys moved for judgment of acquittal. In South Carolina, it's called motion for directed verdict. It's the same thing. They're saying that in the light most favorable to the prosecution, they have not made a case for conspiracy to commit murder. What these attorneys were saying is that there was no evidence offered to show that these two conspired to leave that child in the car. I don't know. I don't know about that. the attorney for Larry King said, listen, this was not his child. He put her in the vehicle. He relinquished all custody, care, and control of the child once she was in the vehicle. He's not the daddy of the child. It's not his. It's not my responsibility to. Yeah, that didn't fly with the judge. No, the judge denied the motion for directed verdict. He said he felt like this was willful, wanton, extremely reckless conduct, and it was the combined conduct of both defendants that caused this death, and that there's evidence to show that a jury could find beyond a reasonable doubt this to be true. He said it was an absolute disregard for human life. Whoa, that's Clifton Newman, Judge Clifton Newman. And he had said he was going to retire after the Murdaugh case, but I think he meant after the financial crimes case, because he's the judge on the financial crimes case, which is going to trial later this year. Maybe he meant that trial. I don't know. Clearly, he's still on the bench. So once that was denied, the defense put on their case. The first defendant was Larry King to put on his case. He opted to take the stand in his own defense. He gets up on the stand, and the first thing that they established was that, yes, at the time of this event, he was a methamphetamine addict. And he said, but you've held all these jobs for all these years. He says, I was a functioning methamphetamine addict. I could take it and I could still function. I could still do my job. But he is now a recovering addict. And if you look at him in the video, he is like a beanpole. He's so skinny. Now he's put on some weight and he looks much, much healthier than he does in the video. So what he said happened that day, they were at his house. They had been together since Friday night. Remember that babysitter that said she got left with that child for the entire weekend? They were together that entire weekend, and they started doing meth on Friday, and that continued on Saturday, and that continued on Sunday. By Sunday evening, finally, she goes home, she gets the kid from the babysitter, and then comes back the next day, Monday. This is the day that this happens. So she's at his house. He somehow figured out that she was cheating on him. So they get into this big fight. He says, I want you to leave. Just take your child and go home. So because the child is getting larger and Rita has some health issues, he offered to carry the child into the car. And you're going to see footage of him carrying the child and putting the child in the back seat of the car. Now, he says the car was running and he assumed that the air conditioning was on. So he didn't think twice about the child being in the car because he thought the car was running. So he puts the child in the car, goes back in the house. Rita follows him into the house where they make up. Do with that what you will, but they were in that house. He takes the child out to the car at 11:15. They're hanging out on the porch after he puts the child into the car. At 11:43, they go in the house to make up, and they're in that house until 12:30, 45 minutes. They come out. He doesn't come out of the house. Rita comes out of the house, walks to the car, sits in the car for a little while, and then goes back into the house with him. And this goes on for 5.5 hours. In and out of the house, child in the back of the car. He's assuming that the air conditioning's on. She's fine. She's in the back of this car. Now, on cross-examination, this is when he admitted that he and Rita had been on this methamphetamine bender that weekend. He mentions that she likes to take her methamphetamine in her coffee. Now, that reminds me, I got a cup of coffee here. No methamphetamine. Oh my God. I'd be like, oh, geez, get a lot of housework done, wouldn't I? Anyway, he admitted that his cognitive reasoning was impaired. And he also admitted that when they were going into the house to make up, they were having sex. Well, we figured that, right? So his defense is, not my kid. Not my kid. I put her in the car was on, air conditioning's on. That's my responsibility. There you go. Bye. Now we know from talks with the judge that Rita also plans to take the stand. So that will happen on Friday. The defense for Larry rested their case. They just put Larry on the stand. The defense for Rita first they put on the locksmith. Oh, that was the other part I forgot. So once they come out of the house and Rita's ready to leave, she discovers that the car is locked, that she locked the key fob in the car. And it's one of those keyless entry cars, and then you push a button once you're in. So you have this little square fob with you where you go. Well, she apparently left it in the car. Car's locked. So he offers to break in through the sunroof, and she's like, nope, I don't want you to do that. So he doesn't know what to do. But and the windows were so tinted, he said you couldn't see inside the vehicle. So they can't see what's going on with the child. So she says, I've got an extra key fob at my house. So he says, well, let me take you to your house. I don't know how far away that is. Let me take you to your house and we'll get that. So he takes her to her house. They get her key fob. They come back. The key fob's battery is so low, it won't open the door. So he calls his friend, who is a locksmith. And he tells the locksmith what the situation is. The locksmith explains to him that there's an emergency key inside the key fob. He tells him how to open that key fob up and get the emergency key. And he says that there's nothing to put it into. And he described how you do it. And I don't have one of these cars, so I can't even picture what he's saying, but you have to remove something, and I don't know. Anyway, he finally gets into the vehicle. The child is dead. Now, the locksmith is called to the stand by the defense. The locksmith testified very consistent with what Larry had said, that he got a call from Larry. He walks him through how to get into this vehicle with the key fob. And then he said he heard, once they got in, he heard a woman say something, and they objected to hearsay, so we don't know what this woman said. It obviously was Rita, but we don't know what she said. But he said based on that, he knew this was really serious. In fact, he said he told a customer that was standing there that just wait a few minutes, you're going to hear every siren in town. And sure enough, a few minutes go by and you hear every ambulance, siren, everything go by. Interesting testimony. Then the defense put on a character witness for Rita, the school principal that she worked with eons ago. Yeah. Who testified that she was very reliable, very dependable. Any time they needed extra help, she would volunteer. And, she was just this wonderful, wonderful person. Okay. Until she became a meth addict. Yeah. So I want to play the video for you. Now that you've heard what this testimony is, I want you to see this video. And please tell me in the comments what you think of this. And it's not the entire 5.5 hours. I wish I could have brought that for you. I would have edited it for you. But what you're going to see is him carrying out the child and then them kind of hanging out on the porch before they go into makeup. But it's not good for them. This video is not good for them. So here it is. What'd you think? Leave me a comment. All right, guys, that is the show for today. Thank you for coming by. I always appreciate each and every one of my subscribers. And if you're new to the channel,